Get free tech advice for your business from O2 Gurus. Search O2 Business for more.
Hey guys, welcome to Btekt, it's Basil here, and this is what I think after a week with the Huawei Honor Holly. For anyone who missed our hands-on and hasn't heard of the Holly, here's an overview in a nutshell. It's £109, it runs Android 4.4.2, it has quad-core internals, a 720p display, an 8-megapixel rear-facing camera, and a 2-megapixel selfie camera. Not bad, eh? But what's it like in the real world? Well, design-wise, it's a plastic-bodied 9.4mm thick smartphone. The 5-inch screen means it definitely isn't small, but it definitely isn't a phablet either. While the high gloss plastic back smacks of old Samsung, it weighs 156 grams because it is plastic, so it's nice that it isn't too heavy. Now, it's available in black and white, resisting fingerprints well around the back, at least on our white version. The front, on the other hand, is a fingerprint magnet. Underneath those fingerprints, you'll find a front-facing 2-megapixel camera and 3 capacitive buttons below the screen. At the bottom of the Holly is a micro USB port, while at the top is a 3.5mm headphone jack. To the right-hand side, volume rocker and power buttons. Lift off the back cover to reveal dual SIM and micro SD card slots, as well as a 2000 mAh removable battery. The inoffensive design is solid for the price, even though we don't love high gloss generally. It doesn't feel hollow, and you get a lot of phone for your money. You also get a lot of pixels for your money when looking at the screen. 921,000 to be precise, spread across 5 inches of IPS screen technology. 720p resolution is therefore brilliant for the price, as too is the Holly's screen in general. While it isn't as superficial or gapless as flagship devices and indeed iPhones and iPads, it's still one of the best performers out there for the £109 asking price, with fantastic viewing angles and decent color reproduction and brightness levels too. It isn't too far behind the iPhone in terms of sharpness either, with 294 pixels per inch. The main downside of the screen really isn't to do with the screen per se, but the glass that sits on top of it. We've already talked about the fingerprints, but it just doesn't feel too rich to the touch. Still, this is categorically the best screen that we've seen for £109 here in the UK. Hats off to Huawei. But what's inside the Honor Holly? Well, it's Android 4.4.2, like we said in the intro. It's far from stock, with an Emotion UI type interface on board. Now, it's different from the Emotion UI 3.0 interface we've seen on the Huawei Honor 6 and indeed the Huawei Ascend Mate 7. It doesn't have themes, for example, and it lacks the rich aesthetic. You do still get a customizable experience here though. Change the number of home screens you have, or the transition effects with a pinch or a long press, for example. And obviously, this being Android, you can customize your home screen experience with shortcuts and widgets too. Unlike stock Android though, there is no applications tray here, so stock Android lovers beware. Still, Huawei does refrain from loading this thing up with too much bloatware, which is great. The pull-down notification bar is so stock in fact that if you throw a custom launcher like Google Now Launcher on board, it really does feel like an overall stock device until you jump into the settings. Thumbing through the UI is smooth, even when loading the phone up with a decent number of applications. And we didn't encounter any bugs either, which is great when using a manufacturer's own launcher. Huawei even gives you a simple launcher on the Honor Holly. This is a simpler user interface, free from folders and widgets, that spells everything out clearly. It's ideally suited for anyone who doesn't want to deal with the complexities of Android, but it's also a great alternative home screen even for pro users, looking nice and clean and streamlining your Android experience. All in all, the Honor Holly puts forward a smooth take on Google's OS. Sure, Lollipop would have been nice, but in this price point, we're not going to complain all that much, and we doubt if you get your hands on the Holly, you'll complain that much either. Furthermore, the Honor Holly has an 8-megapixel f2.0 rear-facing camera. Give this thing some good lighting and a steady hand, and you will be laughing. Good detail, fair dynamic range, and an HDR mode loaded on board is a very good start. And while focus isn't the speediest, taking the actual picture itself is nice and snappy. Drop the lights though, and grain really does creep in quickly, as too does blur. This thing requires virtually tripod levels of steadiness to get good shots in low light environments, which is a real shame. I I'd go so far as to say without a flash at night, the Honor Holly is nigh on useless as a camera. Flick on the flash and it's a different story though. Thankfully, the flash does a very good job of lighting up scenes. There are a few other modes kicking about the Holly's camera UI, but the main one of note is beauty mode, which Huawei has become synonymous with. The front-facing 2-megapixel camera really is where beauty mode comes into its own though. Like with the main camera, give it some good light and you will get some good results, and like with the main camera, drop the lights and things get grainy very fast, and unfortunately there's no front-facing flash to save the day here. That said, beauty mode is still exceptional, making you look 2 parts blow-up doll, 1 part alien in a flash. As for the full HD video, good lighting good, bad lighting bad. No surprises there. Yet again, the video light helps, but what really did impress us with the video was the digital image stabilization. It does a really decent job of keeping everything nice and still, just like Sony Xperia phones. Focus is strong in good light too, even if it isn't that speedy, although in low light, focus really does have a few issues. You can check out our night and day video samples linked below. As far as the loudspeaker goes, thanks to the curved back, when the phone is on a surface, it isn't particularly muffled, which is great. And while the quality of the speaker isn't the best, its positioning does manage to avoid hands when you're watching a movie in landscape or even playing a game. And as for gaming itself, the Btekt processor on board does a surprisingly good job of plowing through everything we threw at it. It played back even the highest quality games with very little grumping, such as Modern Combat 5 and Asphalt 8. The screen also showcases them brilliantly, so if you want this for simple gaming or advanced gaming, you should be sorted. And while benchmark performance isn't that great, real world use, we didn't get any slowdown on this thing. Away from games and onto video, and the Honor Holly runs Android, and that means you can get video onto here as easy as pie. Whether using streaming apps like Netflix or BBC iPlayer, or loading your own videos on here and downloading third-party players, you shouldn't have any problems whatsoever. Plus, the Honor Holly's 5-inch screen makes everything look beautiful. The same can be said of ebooks, with the 294 pixel per inch display showcasing even the finest of tech stuff very well for the price. Ultimately, this is an awesome multimedia phone, especially for someone like a teenager, for example. This isn't least of all down to the fact you get 16 gigabytes of onboard memory, as well as micro SD expandability up to an additional 32 gigabytes. That means you can get up to 48 gigabytes on here. Again, £109, that's awesome. The dual SIM card supports 3G, with one supporting WCDMA. There's also your standard Bluetooth 4.0, Wi-Fi, GPS, etc. It's all powered along by a MediaTek MT6582 processor. Paired with 1 gig of RAM, unfortunately it doesn't benchmark too well, as we alluded to earlier in the video. Antutu clocked in just below 18,000, meaning that it straggled behind devices like the Motorola Moto G 2014 edition with its Snapdragon 400 processor. This falling behind was much the same on all the other benchmark tests that we ran as well, but we have to stress we didn't experience any problems when actually using the phone, and we did use it for over a week. Probably the area we were most concerned about was that 2000 milliamp battery. 5 inches of screen, 2000 milliamps. On paper, this reads precariously. The same combination left the Lumia 920 with, well, quite frankly, horrific battery life in our opinion. But how does it leave the Honor Holly? Better. Not brilliant, but definitely better than the 920. Here's why. You have a low resolution screen and you have a lower powered processor, thereby saving some of that battery. If you reckon you'll be blitzing your phone night and day, it probably won't last a full one, but you can always carry a spare battery with you. That said, if you're a more mild-mannered user, using it moderately, it will definitely see you through from morning through to night. If you're a light user, you may even get 2 days out of this thing. So that's the Huawei Honor Holly, a phone that doesn't cost the earth, punches way above its weight, and is very, very easy for me to recommend.